What's your favourite game? One that you would describe yourself as a fan of? Now for me, it would have to be Skyrim. But do you love your favourite game enough to pay several $100s on tickets, accommodation and flights to a country on the edge of the Arctic Circle to hang out with other players of the game, swap stories and have a big old party? Well, you know what? You might if your game of choice is EVE Online. Thousands of the spacefaring fans attended Fanfest this year, held in Iceland's capital Reykjavik. It's a celebration of all things in the EVE universe, a setting for developers and players to mix, swap stories and just generally have a good time. But what is going on in our human brains that can make players of a game so passionate, so loyal, so fanatical? Now, if you haven't heard of EVE Online, it's a massively multiplayer online game played by over 500,000 people. Now, what sets the game apart from other MMOs is that everyone plays in the same universe, on a single shard. So I figured what better community to use as a case study to investigate the psychology of what makes people feel and behave like fans.
For me, the key to EVE is definitely the community. I mean, the people who always play together, and you can hate your guts one day and just love each other the next. It's an absolutely awesome feeling. And the fact that everything in EVE is seeded from the players makes it even more awesome, because everything is created by us for our game.
It's mainly a community and sandbox aspect.
It really is a sandbox thing that really appeals to me. The fact that whenever you do something, you're messing up someone else's life. I really love that.
I think it's just the community. You make friends and you make enemies.
You play other games. There's no repercussions for losing. This, you lose something and it burns, and you try to lick your wounds and come back with a little smarter, hopefully, and move from there.
Now, being a fan of a thing is generally a positive experience. This is predominantly because we get a great feeling of oneness when we connect to other people, when we self-identify as part of a group. So why is this? Well, a prominent and established theory of human psychology, and one I've talked about before on Reality Check, is the idea of self-determination theory. This gives us an insight into our motivations, why we do things. According to the theory, we are all motivated to be competent, autonomous, and importantly for us today, related to other people. Now this ties into exactly what those fans were saying about why they enjoyed the game so much. It's all about the community. In the world of social psychology, we treat a group which we belong to as an in-group, one that we self-identify with. An out-group, on the other hand, is one you don't belong to. Now, our own innate human psychology means that we unwittingly tie our self-esteem in with any group that we join. So not only do we favour that group and talk it up, but we will actively discriminate against other groups, putting them down in comparison in an effort to protect our own self-esteem investment. Scientific research has demonstrated this by simply dividing a number of individuals at random into two groups and then giving them time to bond. People will then actively favour those members of their own group and behave derisively towards members of the other group, based on nothing at all other than the random assignment to that group in the first place. Now, I also put the question of what makes EVE fans so loyal to the game developer CCP's Chief Marketing Officer and all-round cheerful chap, David Reed, to see what he thought.
You literally are impacting every other player with everything that you do, because everyone is playing on the same shard together. Everyone is in this sandbox style of design. There is a very robust, high-fidelity virtual economy under it. And what this means in the end is that as an EVE player, right, I get to understand that this is a game where I really make a difference, right? My choices have real consequences. My actions have impact. There is no George Lucas of EVE Online who is like, here's the story, here are the stars, here's how it's going to go. No, it is all in the hands of the players.
This sandbox environment is also crucial to encouraging a committed fan base. Existing in a world where you can see that your actions matter and that what you do makes a difference is really important in helping to create the feeling of contingency. Without this, our illusion of the world can quickly fall apart and break the relationship we feel with the game. This also fosters a sense of ownership, and fans regularly refer to EVE as their game. This ties into something called the endowment effect, which hypothesizes that people ascribe more value to things merely because they own them. A lovely little experiment demonstrated this idea by splitting participants into two groups. One group were merely shown a mug by a researcher who kept it in their hands, and the other group were allowed to hold it and told that they in fact now owned the mug. Both groups were then asked how much they would pay for the mug. Now, the second group, who felt they had ownership, gave the mug more than double the value on average compared to the first group. So by giving players control, you help foster ownership, which in turn can lead to them ascribing it with a higher value. At least that's the theory. Now, if you talk to anyone who's tried to play EVE and failed, you'll undoubtedly hear that the game was just too hard or just too complicated. So I asked David if he thought that this barrier for entry, this degree of exclusivity, might also be playing a role.
We are proud to be a company of adults making core games for adults who are core gamers, and there is a certain amount of challenge that, you know, is part of being a gamer, right? I like having bars set and surpassing them. And more games today are shying away from that. They're making the hurdles lighter to appeal to broader and larger audiences. The problem with that is those people never become terribly loyal, right? You're either a gamer with a capital G or you're not. And at the end of the day, if you're a gamer and times get tough, you're gonna eat mac and cheese and ramen noodles to feed your gaming habit. But if you're one of these casual gamers and times get tough, the games are the first thing to go.
All this further engenders that in-group feeling of we are better than them. Plus, it can also help to achieve cognitive flow. Flow is the feeling of focus, of being in the zone, and it's at its most powerful at the point where high difficulty and high player skill level meet. Pretty much a perfect description of the EVE Online universe. So it appears that games like EVE Online, which provide a strong community, give ownership, and which set a high challenge, are really well suited to encouraging exceptionally dedicated fans. But what do you reckon? Can you think of a different game which does this even better? Let me know in the comments. Last week on Reality Check, Seb4 took the reins and investigated the limits of superhuman strength. To quickly recap, Seb explained that our bodies really have two levels of the most that we can lift. Maximal strength being the most we can lift with conscious effort, and then absolute strength, the most our bodies can physically handle before falling to pieces. Now, the average person's maximal strength, as Seb explained, is roughly 2/3 of their absolute strength. But how about powerlifters, as YouTube commenter Mr. Bit Viper asked? Well, if you are a serious powerlifter, the type who enters competitions and spend most days down the gym, that potential increase of 1/3 would in fact be much, much less. In fact, you might be able to lift closer to 80% of your absolute strength already, just with conscious effort due to practice and perfect technique. And if you want to contact me about this episode or have a suggestion for a future topic, then probably the best way is to get in touch with me on Twitter. I'm @CamFrazRob. Okay, thanks for watching, folks. See you next week.